The ship floated in dead space, cold and dark like a ghost. Its lights were broken, its engines silent, and its walls were scarred from battle. No one answered the calls, no distress signal replied. But Jace went in anyway. He was a scavenger. A human with strong arms, tired eyes, and an old ship that barely flew. This wreck was his last hope for food, parts, or fuel. His boots echoed as he stepped through the metal hallway, flashlight cutting through dust. Everything was quiet too. Quiet, hello, he called, his voice bouncing off the walls. No answer came, only silence and the soft hum of dying energy cells. He passed broken screens, cracked glass, and a door that sparked with loose wires. He pushed deeper inside. That's when he heard it, a sound soft, almost like a whimper. Jace froze, listening again. Yes, there it was. Behind the wall, like a child crying. He moved fast, pulling open a broken door and stepping into a small chamber. There were cages, metal cages, lined up along the wall. Most were empty, stained with old blood and scratches, but one had something inside. Something small. He walked closer, shining his light through the bars. It was a girl, but not human. She was tiny, barely the size of a house cat. Her skin was pale blue, her hair like silver threads. Long and tangled, she wore a ripped dress. Her knees pulled to her chest, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. When she saw him, she screamed a high, sharp sound full of fear. She crawled backward into the corner of the cage, pressing herself against the bars. Her mouth moved fast, speaking. In her language, voice shaking, Jace raised both hands. Easy. Hey, I'm not here to hurt you. She didn't understand, but she felt his calm voice, saw that he didn't open the cage. Still, her eyes stayed wide, watching him like he was a monster, like he was going to eat her. Jace looked around, saw the rusted lock, and sighed. He kneeled slowly, pulled out his toolkit, and started picking it. Each click made the alien girl shiver, her body shaking like a leaf. Then snap, the lock opened. She didn't move, just stared at him, frozen with fear. He stepped back, giving her space. You can come out, he said softly. She looked at the open cage, then at him, then back again. Still, she didn't move. Jace reached into his pouch and pulled out a small water pouch. He placed it on the floor, sliding it toward her. She stared at it, then slowly reached out one tiny hand. Her fingers were thin and shaking as she touched the pouch and pulled it close. She drank fast, like she hadn't tasted water in days. Then she looked up, eyes still full of fear, and whispered in a cracked voice, "Please. No, eat." Jace's chest tightened. She really thought he would eat her. What had happened on this ship? He spoke gently. No one's going to eat you, I promise. She didn't understand the words, but maybe she understood the tone. Jace slowly stood, turning away to show he wasn't a threat. Come if you want, he said, walking out of the room. Behind him, he heard soft footsteps, tiny ones. He looked over his shoulder, and there she was, walking slowly, holding the pouch tight. Still scared, but not frozen anymore. He gave her a small nod, and they kept walking. Back on his ship, he laid out a blanket near the heater. She sat down, curling into a ball, always watching him. He gave her a cube of fruit, soft and sweet. She stared at it for a long time, sniffed it, then nibbled a corner. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat in the corner with wide eyes, the blanket wrapped around her. Jace turned off the lights and closed his eyes, but he could feel her watching. Not out of trust, but fear, her words echoed in his mind. Please, no eat. He didn't know who she was or what had happened to her, but one thing was clear: someone had hurt her badly. And now she thought humans were monsters. Jace sighed as he drifted to sleep. He had only come looking for scrap and wires, but now He had something far more fragile on board. A terrified, tiny alien girl who believed he was her enemy. And somehow, he had to prove she was safe now. The ship hummed gently as it drifted through open space. Stars blinking quietly outside the windows. Inside, Jace moved carefully, trying not to make noise. He didn't want to scare her again. She was sitting near the heater, hugging the old blanket close, her tiny body almost hidden inside the folds. She hadn't said anything since last night, only watched him with those glowing eyes. Wide and alert, when he offered her water this morning, she had taken it without a word. But the moment he stepped too close, she had crawled backward like a frightened animal. Jace sighed and walked to the food shelf. He grabbed a small fruit cube and a warm broth packet. He poured it into a bowl and placed it gently on the floor near her, then stepped back, slowly. Carefully, giving her space, she looked at the food, then at him, then back again. Her hands stayed wrapped around the blanket, shaking slightly. Finally, after a long moment, she crept forward and picked up the bowl. Her nose twitched as she sniffed it. She took one tiny sip, then another. Her eyes darted toward Jace, like she expected something bad to happen. But he didn't move, didn't speak, just watched quietly. Her hands were so small. The bowl looked huge in them when she was done. She wiped her lips with the edge of the blanket and crawled back into her corner. Still silent, Jace sat down. Across the room near the console, pretending to check the ship's systems. Truth was, he didn't know what to do with her, where to take her, who she was, or why she was in a cage on that dead ship. He opened the logs again, scrolling through corrupted files. Most were unreadable, static, and broken data. No names, no cargo list, no crew files. He looked over at her. She was curled up again, eyes half closed now. Tired, but still too scared to sleep. Maybe she thought if she closed her eyes, he'd hurt her. He ran a hand through his hair. "What did they do to you?" he whispered, not expecting an answer. Hours passed, the ship stayed quiet. Just the soft hum of life support and distant creaks of metal. When Jace stood to stretch his legs, she flinched. He froze mid-step, then slowly lowered himself back down. She peeked at him, unsure, maybe even a little confused, like she was starting to realize he wasn't going to hit her. Jace tried again, this time with words, slow and soft. "My name is Jace." He tapped his chest. Jace, she blinked at. Him, said nothing. He tried again. "You." He pointed at her gently. She tilted her head. Silent, Jace tapped his chest again. Jace then pointed at her. "You?" Her lips moved a little. No sound came out at first. Then, almost like a whisper, "Nay?" He smiled, nodding. "Nisha." She looked down quickly, hiding her face behind the blanket. But he saw at a flicker of something. Not fear this time. Maybe surprise. Maybe even trust. He didn't push it. Didn't ask more. Just leaned back and stared at the stars. Outside, night came again, and Jace lay down on the cot in the corner. The lights dimmed, leaving the ship in a soft blue glow. He closed his eyes, letting sleep take him slowly. That's when he felt its soft, careful footsteps. His eyes opened slightly, just enough to see her. She was standing near him, clutching the blanket, looking down at his face. Her mouth trembled like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Jace stayed still, breathing slowly. Pretending to sleep, she crouched down near his feet and sat there, quietly, not touching him. Just staying close. Maybe the warmth, maybe the silence. Maybe the way he hadn't yelled. Whatever it was, something had changed in the middle of the night. Jace turned slightly and saw her curled up near him, sleeping at last, her breathing soft and slow. The blanket still wrapped around her shoulders. Her toy, a worn-out stuffed animal he'd given her, tucked under her arm. He didn't move, didn't speak. Just watched her for a moment. Something inside him tightened, like an invisible thread pulling across his chest. She had been terrified of him, and now she was close enough to touch. She thought he would eat her, but now she was sleeping beside him. He turned his head and stared at the ceiling of the ship, eyes wide open. He had found many strange things in space, but nothing like this. This tiny alien girl had no one, nowhere to go, and somehow she was here with him. The stars outside shimmered like cold diamonds, but inside the ship, something small and warm had begun to glow. A beginning, maybe, of something unexpected. The girl was missing. Jace sat up fast, his hand reaching for the sidearm near his bed. It wasn't there. Panic hit him like a wave. The heater still hummed quietly. The blanket lay folded neatly where she had been. Her toy was gone too. He rushed to the main corridor of the ship, bare feet thudding on cold metal, his voice low but sharp. "Nia, where are you?" No answer, just silence and the soft thrum of the engines. His heart raced. He checked the storage room, the airlock panel still locked. Thank the stars, but she wasn't inside. Then he heard something metal tapping lightly, the sound of tiny fingers. Coming from the back workshop, he moved fast, but careful, didn't want to scare her again. As he entered, he saw her crouched beside a crate. Wires spilled everywhere, and in her hands his old voice recorder. Nia looked up at him with wide eyes, startled but not afraid. She held up the recorder, pressed the button, and a crackling sound filled the room. "Jace," the machine repeated in her small voice. "Jace," he froze, heart slowing. Her voice was rough but clear. She smiled barely, but it was real, small and shining. "You're trying to learn," he whispered, not to her, but to himself. She nodded slowly, still holding the recorder like a treasure. He knelt down, pointing to himself. "Jace," then to her. "Nia," she repeated. Nia, proud now, then pointed back at him. "Jace." It was the first time she had smiled without hiding it. Her teeth were small and sharp, but her smile was soft, shy, like she was still learning how to feel safe. Jace stood up, reached over to a panel, and opened a screen. Maps of nearby star systems lit up. "We need to figure out where you're from," he said, then paused. "Where?" "Home." He pointed to the map, then to her. "Home. Nia's home." She blinked slowly, then stood up, walked over to the screen. Her little fingers hovered over the glowing lights. She didn't point anywhere, just lowered her hand and shook her head. "No home?" he asked, but she didn't speak, just turned and walked away, back in the kitchen. She sat quietly and watched as Jace prepared something warm. Her eyes followed every move, every flick of his fingers. Every press of a button, he placed a bowl in front of her, waited. She leaned in and sniffed it, then looked at him, her voice tiny. "Food. Safe." He nodded. "Safe." She took a slow bite, then another, chewing softly. Her shoulders relaxed, her legs stretched out from under her. She looked less like a frightened animal, and more like a little girl. Later, she began mimicking him. When he reached for a tool, she reached for the same. When he scratched his head, she did too. When he dropped a wrench and said, "Oops," she whispered it back. "Oops." It made him laugh. Not a loud laugh, just a small breath of warmth, and she giggled too, surprised by her own sound. Like it had escaped her by accident, he gave her one of the old tablets, turned off all controls, and let her draw on it lines, circles, patterns, then shapes that looked like stars, cages, and strange towers. She drew a large shape, a man, maybe standing beside a cage with a tiny figure inside. She stared at it for a long time before pressing a button and erasing it. Jace didn't ask. He didn't need to. That night, when the ship dimmed and they both settled to sleep, Nia didn't go to the corner. Instead, she pulled her blanket next to Jace's cat and lay down quietly. She didn't curl up in fear. She just lay still, her toy beside her. her eyes blinking slowly in the dark. As Jace drifted off, he felt her small hand touch his sleeve. Not pulling, not grabbing. "Just a quiet connection, Jace," she whispered. And that was it. No fear in her voice this time, just his name, like it meant safety. He smiled in the dark, eyes closed, the stars outside watching as a scared little alien girl, once locked in a cage, now chose to sleep beside a human. And neither of them knew it yet, but this was just the beginning. The signal blinked red. It was faint, just a pulsing light behind the metal wall near the ship's medical station. Jace hadn't noticed it before, but now that he was fixing the heater unit, it flashed again, steady and slow. Like a heartbeat, he frowned, pushed aside a panel, and leaned closer. The light was buried under a metal plate. Glowing through a small crack, he pulled out his tool, unscrewed the plate, and peeled it away. Carefully, inside, wires twisted around a small black Podan alien design. Not his. The pod was blinking, giving off a silent signal into space. His stomach dropped. It wasn't his ship broadcasting. It was her. Jace turned around fast. Heart racing. Nisha was sitting on the floor nearby, drawing again on her tablet, humming softly to herself, her toy resting in her lap. He stepped toward her, trying to stay calm. "Nia," he said softly, kneeling in front of her. Can you show me your arm?" She blinked, tilted her head, then slowly held out her small left arm. He turned her wrist gently, then stopped. There it was, just beneath the skin of her forearm. A tiny metal lump pulsed faintly with red light. She didn't know. She looked up at him, confused, but not scared. He swallowed hard. "Tracker," he whispered. "You've been tagged." The girl's eyes narrowed, trying to understand. He reached into the drawer, pulled out a small scanner, and held it over the bump. The device beeped once, and data scrolled across the screen: coordinates, signals, frequency codes. Someone knew where she was. And they were coming. Nia's smile faded. She saw the tension in his face. Her fingers clutched the stuffed toy tighter. He looked her in the eye. "Serious now? Did someone put this in you? The ones who locked you in the cage?" She nodded slowly, her voice barely a whisper. "Bad men. Catch small ones. Sell." Jace stood up, pacing there still. "Tracking you, and that means they could find this ship, find us." She stood too, nervous now. "Hide?" she asked. He shook his head. "Not enough." She looked at him, voice trembling. "Eat me." He blinked in surprise, then dropped to one knee again, taking her hand gently. "No, Nisha, never. But someone else might try." Her eyes grew wide with fear again, but this time she didn't pull away. Jace walked to the medkit and pulled out a deep scan tool and a microsurgical pod. It was old, but still worked. He opened a drawer and found pain-stilling gel, just enough. When he turned around, she was already sitting on the table, arms stretched out, not speaking, just trusting him. He stared for a moment, surprised, then moved closer. "This is going to hurt a little." She nodded, no fear in her eyes now, just a quiet kind of strength. Jace rubbed the gel over the lump, then pressed the surgical pod over it with a soft click. The device scanned the area. A red dot appeared where the cut would go. He took a breath, held her hand, and whispered, 1, 2, 3. The tool sliced gently, and Nisha gasped, a tiny whimper escaping her lips. But she didn't move, didn't cry. He reached in with forceps, pulled out the tracker. It was no bigger than a grain of rice, glowing red even now. He dropped it into a sealed case, then sprayed sealant over her cut. The wound closed instantly. No blood, just a tiny mark left behind. "It's out," he said softly. "They won't track you through it anymore." Nia looked at the metal piece, through the glass, then turned away, pressing her face against his shoulder, her arms small but tight around him. She didn't say anything, just held on. Breathing fast, like she was trying not to cry, Jace held her gently, his hand resting on her back. No words. Needed now, later, he stepped outside the ship onto a tiny, rocky moon. Cold air brushing past his face. He opened the case, threw the tracker as far as he could, then shot it. The red light exploded in a burst of sparks. Let them chase that, he thought. Back inside, Nia was already asleep, curled up in the cot, her arm wrapped in soft cloth. Her toy beside her again, her breathing peaceful. Jace stood at the doorway for a long time, arms crossed, eyes watching her. That tiny alien girl had been hunted, sold, locked in a cage, and yet she still smiled, still trusted. He didn't know what kind of people were coming for her, but if they came again, they wouldn't find a frightened little girl alone. They'd find a human standing in the way, and he was ready. The ship jolted hard. Jace grabbed the control panel, blinking as red lights flashed around him. A loud alarm screamed in his ears. Nia tumbled from her seat and rolled against the wall. He shouted, "Hold on," as he pulled the ship out of autopilot. His hands flew over the controls. The stars outside spun wildly, and 3 red dots blinked on the radar. They had found them. The enemy ship looked like a silver spear cutting through space, fast, silent, and deadly. It didn't hail them, didn't warn them. It just opened fire. A bolt of plasma tore across the hull, and the lights flickered. Nisha crawled to his side, her face pale, eyes wide. Jace locked in evasive maneuvers, diving into the edge of an asteroid field. Rock and ice blurred past the windows. He gritted his teeth. They tracked the signal before I destroyed it. Nisha trembled beside him, her tiny hands clutching the seatbelt tight. Bad men. Fast. Always catch. No, Jace, said voice hard now. Not this time. The ship rattled as they dodged another shot. The enemy was closing in fast. Fast, Jace flew lower, weaving between floating boulders the size of buildings, hoping that rocks would block their scanners. A sudden explosion rocked the rear of the ship. Systems flared. Smoke poured from a vent. "Shields gone," he muttered. "If they hit us again, we're done." Nia climbed into his lap. Not out of fear, but something else. She placed both hands on the dashboard, her skin glowing faintly. Jace blinked. "What are you, Trust?" she said quietly. "I help." Before he could ask, her eyes lit up. Glowing like twin suns, blue light pulsed through her arms. Flowing into the controls, the ship began to respond faster, smoother. Every button he pressed reacted before his finger even landed. It was like she had merged with the ship itself. Jace flew through the asteroid belt like a ghost, weaving so. Close to rocks, they scraped the outer shell, but the enemy couldn't follow. One wrong move, man, they crashed. Behind them, the attacker clipped a rock and spun out of control, slamming into a larger boulder and bursting into flames. Jace looked back through the window, breathing hard, then looked down. Nia was unconscious in his lap, her glow fading, skin dim and cold. He lifted her gently, placed her in the sleeping cot, covered her with the warmest blanket he had. Her little chest rose and fell, but her face was pale. "You saved us," he whispered, brushing her silver hair from her forehead. "You did it, Nia." He turned on the internal scans. Her vitals were weak, energy levels almost empty. Whatever she had done, it had cost her everything. The ship floated now in a quiet pocket of space, hidden behind the shadows of ice and stone. He checked the radar. No more signals, no more danger. But peace didn't bring comfort, not with her lying so still. He walked to the med bay, dug through the shelves, searching for anything, any energy supplements, plasma cells, fusion drips. Nothing was made for her kind. He grabbed the translator core, activated it again. Her last recordings played back. In a soft voice, broken words, soft tones, one message repeated more than the others. Scared, alone. "No, eat. Please. Help." Jace's hand tightened into a fist. He remembered the cage, the scars on her arms, the way she flinched at shadows. And now she had nearly died saving him. He sat beside her, took her hand, and whispered, "You're not alone anymore, little one. I promise you that." Outside, stars burned quietly. But inside, in the silence of a ship half broken and drifting, something powerful had just been born. A bond stronger than blood. A human and a tiny alien girl hunted by shadows, but holding on to something brighter. Hope. The ship was dark. Except for the soft blue glow coming from her skin. Jace sat by Nia's side, not sleeping, not eating, just watching her tiny body. Lay still, her breathing shallow, her silver hair spread across the blanket like moonlight. 3 days had passed, 3 days without her speaking, laughing, or moving. He had tried everything: warmth, nutrients, light stimulation, but nothing worked. Her vitals were fading. The glow inside her was flickering like a dying ember. He didn't know what she was, not exactly, but he knew one thing for sure: she wasn't ordinary, and she was slipping away that morning. He stared at her hand, resting on the pillow, and for the first time in years, Jace whispered, "Please, don't die." Then something strange happened. The lights on the ship dimmed. The heater gave a strange hum, and the emergency energy cord turned on by itself. He hadn't touched it. He stood up quickly, checking the systems. No input, no command. But power was flowing into the ship again. From somewhere deep within, he ran back to Nia. Her chest rising more steadily now, the soft blue glow returning to her cheeks. Her fingers twitched, just once, but enough. Enough to make him gasp. Then, her eyes opened slowly. Not wide, not strong, but open. Her voice came next, quiet and broken, cold, but safe. Jace couldn't stop the relief from rushing through him. He sat beside her, shaking his head. "You scared me, kid." She smiled, weak but real. Then whispered, "You stay. I wake." Later, when she had enough strength, he gave her small sips of fruit water. The way she drank reminded him of the first time they met. Cautious, careful, afraid. But now there was no fear in her eyes. Where did the energy come from? He asked gently, brushing her hair from her face. She looked toward the ceiling, toward space, and said a word in her own language, soft, musical, and impossible to translate. Then she tried again in broken speech. "I call. Old light in me. Power." He stared at her, not understanding, but feeling something deep in his bones. She wasn't just a lost child. She was connected to something ancient, something hidden, something powerful. That evening, she sat upright for the first time. Still weak, still wrapped in the blanket, but stronger than before. She tapped the console with one hand, showing him a rough star map she'd drawn on the tablet in the center. She had drawn a bright symbol, a sun with rings. She pointed to it. "My sky. My stars. You want to go there?" he asked. She nodded. "It's safe, old place. Home for me." Jace checked the coordinates. They were far, deep in a forgotten sector marked as dead space. No trade routes, no colonies, just empty black. But he saw the way her hand trembled, the way her voice cracked with the word home. "Will go," he said, without thinking twice, no matter how far the ship's engines were weak. Barely enough for a long jump. But he began repairs, day and night, using every tool, every spare part, while Nia rested and slowly got better. And then on the 5th day she stood on her own. Small feet touching the cold floor, her balance shaky but determined. Jace smiled wide, watching her take careful steps toward him. "Hey, look at you, walking again?" She grinned, then held her palm toward him, glowing softly. He raised his palm and touched hers. A strange warmth passed between them, not heat, not energy, but something invisible. trust. That night, while they shared a small meal, Jace asked quietly, "Naya, what are you really?" She stared into the flickering lights of the heater and whispered, "Lost star. Old ones took, used me. But I came back." He didn't press further, didn't need to. Her words were full of pain, but also power. She wasn't just someone's victim, she was someone's secret. And now, she was his responsibility. When they plotted the course, Jace looked at her and asked, "Are you sure?" Nia touched the screen, voice steady, "I ready. And I'm not afraid anymore." As the stars shifted and the engines roared to life, Jace knew the journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but he also knew he wasn't flying alone anymore, not with her on board. The stars ahead looked different, not brighter, not closer, but alive. The moment they entered that silent region of space, everything changed. The ship's lights flickered for a second. Like something ancient had brushed against them, Jace kept his hands tight on the controls, eyes scanning the dark screen. No signals, no noise. Just quiet space, stretching endlessly. Behind him, Nia sat straight and calm, her eyes glowing gently, her voice soft. "We close." "How do you know?" Jace asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She placed a small hand over her chest. "It call me?" "Always call." Now it's loud. He glanced at the screen again. Nothing showed, no planets, no satellites, just one small flicker barely visible. A soft pulse, like a heartbeat hidden in the dark. He followed it. The ship drifted toward the signal through a cloud of stardust so thick it painted the windows silver. And then it appeared, a small planet, almost invisible, wrapped in layers of light and shadow. Something cloaked it, not with tech, but with something older, deeper. As they came closer, the light around the ship began to change, turning soft and gold, and Naya stood up slowly, walking toward the window. Her voice was different now. No longer broken, no longer afraid. "It remember me." Jace watched her carefully. Something was happening. Her feet glowed as they touched the floor, and her skin shimmered like sunlight. On water then, the ship began to descend, not by his hands but by hers. The controls moved gently, guided by her presence alone. He let go, trusting her completely. They landed in a field of crystal grass. The wind outside, soft like a song. Jace stepped out first, rifle on his back, eyes scanning for danger, but there was nothing here that felt wrong. No cold, no fear, just silence and light. Then Nisha stepped down, barefoot, small, glowing brighter with each step. And from the trees figures appeared tall, elegant beings. With pale skin and eyes full of stars, they didn't speak, they bowed, slowly, deeply. As if greeting a queen, Jace tensed, ready to protect her. But Naya turned to him, smiling gently, and whispered, "They're mine, my people, my blood." He stared, stunned, as they approached her carefully, placing their hands on her head, her shoulders, whispering words in a language the wind seemed to understand. A woman among them stepped forward, older, her hair glowing white like Nia's. She looked at Jace and spoke in clear, soft words. "You saved the last light of our kind. I didn't know," he said quietly. "I just found her in a cage, and you chose not to sell her," the woman said. "Not to fear her, not to use her, but to protect." He didn't answer, just looked at Nisha, who was now standing tall between her people. No longer tiny, no longer trembling. She was still small, but there was power in her now, calm and quiet, but strong. The woman touched Jace's shoulder. "You can stay if you wish." He looked at the sky, at the broken stars and the heavy silence behind them. "No," he said after a moment, "she's safe now." "That's enough." Nisha ran to him then, arms wrapping around his waist, her voice soft. "You go." He knelt and smiled, brushing her hair gently. You don't need me anymore, Nija. She shook her head, a chaos forming in her bright eyes. I want my Jace. He held her tightly, heart heavy. You're home now, little star. It's where you belong. She pulled back slowly, her hands glowing brighter. Then she reached into the air and shaped something from the light. A small stone, clear, warm, and full of gentle energy. She pressed it into his palm. Always with you. If you need, I come. He closed his fingers around it, nodding once, unable to speak. When he boarded the ship again, the engines hummed quietly. The seat felt empty beside him. The ship lighter, but lonelier. He didn't cry, not then, not as the engines carried him into space, not as the planet vanished behind him in golden light. But he kept the stone in his hand, feeling its pulse, soft and alive. He had saved a life, yes, but more than that. He had given someone back her future, and somewhere, far behind him, on a hidden world full of old stars and bright dreams, a tiny alien girl once terrified of him now stood among her people, strong, free, and forever connected to the human who once opened a cage and chose kindness instead of fear.